Hello everyone and welcome. So today we are going to talk about a very important and a very critical regulatory system of our body called Renin Angiotensin Aldosterone system or RAAS system. So let's see how can we define the RAAS system. So it's a very basic regulatory system of our body which regulates the blood pressure, blood volume and electrolytic balance. And now let's take an example of an accident. Accident happens, it leads to excessive bleeding, and that is the main point of our focus. Because whenever we start to lose excessive blood, many mechanism activates in our body through numerous bioreceptors in our body, and that facilitates in releasing renin. So let's see some of these mechanisms. First is directly through the kidney. A point to note that a baroreceptor is present in each and every nephron. So whenever they sense that there is a low blood pressure, they signal the Pulcine cells, which is a part of the juxtaglomerular apparatus, to convert prorenin to renin and release it in the bloodstream. And the second mechanism is through the carotid sinus, which is present at the proximal end of internal carotid artery. So that carotid sinus also has a baroreceptor, which of course senses low blood pressure and signals our CNS through the cranial nerve 9, that is the glossopharyngeal nerve, which in turn signals the heart to increase the heart rate through the cranial nerve 10, which is the vagus nerve, and also signals the juxtaglomerular apparatus to release renin. And now we have renin in our bloodstream, and now we need to know what it actually do in our body. So its function is to go and act on the angiotensinogen, which is released by the liver to convert it into angiotensin 1, and that angiotensin 1 will go through pulmonary capillaries and get converted into angiotensin 2 by the action of angiotensin converting enzyme, and those enzymes are present on the lining of pulmonary capillaries. This part is about the mechanism of action of angiotensin 2. But wait, before we start, let's revise a few concepts. The first will be the systolic blood pressure. So it's a blood pressure on the arterial wall by the heart at its pumping state. And the diastolic blood pressure is the pressure of arterial wall when our heart is in the resting state. Now that out of the way, let's continue. So angiotensin 2 has receptors on both arterioles and venous smooth muscles. Angiotensin 2 being a vasoconstrictor, so it will squeeze the vessel lumen and make it narrower, hence increasing the blood pressure. So when it squeezes the venous wall, the blood rushes to the right atrium of the heart, increasing the venous return. It will in turn increase the cardiac output, and heart now has to pump harder, increasing the systolic blood pressure. Now blood has accumulated in the arteries and arterioles are much narrower than before. So the blood starts to put pressure on the arterial walls, and that will increase the diastolic blood pressure. Alright, so the next mechanism is when angiotensin 2 binds with the adrenal cortex, and that will cause the release of aldosterone, and that aldosterone will bind with the principal cells of the nephron. It will start producing sodium-potassium pump on the surface of principal cells. So just a quick revision on what sodium-potassium pumps are. The sodium-potassium pumps are an antipode, means 3 sodium ions will go out of the cell and 2 potassium ions will get inside the cell, and aldosterone will do exactly that. As you can see in the picture, because of sodium-potassium pump, principal cells are rapidly losing sodium and gaining potassium. So that will be compensated by the sodium present in the nephron lumen. And we know that very well that water always follows the sodium. So because of that, sodium and water will get out of the principal cells to ultimately increasing the blood volume. Alright, next mechanism is when angiotensin 2 acts on the central nervous system. In that, it does 3 effects. First, it will act on the hypothalamus, thereby stimulating the thirst center, and it will increase the water intake, so increasing the blood volume. Second, it will stimulate the posterior pituitary to release ADH, antidiuretic hormone, to increase the water reabsorption of the kidney. And third, it will decrease the baroreceptor reflex so that our body won't try to lower our blood pressure when it's needed more. And the last but not the least is when angiotensin 2 will stimulate the sympathetic activity of our body by increasing the norepinephrine release at target sites. So it can work on our heart to increase the heart rate, or work on our juxtaglomerular apparatus to increase the renin production. And that's all for the video, friends. Thank you so much for watching.